Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I am back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. I must apologize before I start this Q&A. There's a little bit of work going on right below me, so you're going to hear a little bit of drilling in the background. Hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully I can make it through this Q&A and not lose my train of thought. All right, so let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, why does my body look different even when the scale hasn't changed? Body composition. All right. So you've exchanged fat for muscle, bearing in mind that you are training regularly and that your diet is dialed in. All right. So let's say you started your weight loss plan at 190 pounds. 6 weeks later, you're still 190 pounds, but all of a sudden your pant size is down by 3 sizes. Your shirts fit you a little bit tighter in the chest if you're a guy, right? So your t-shirts are fitting you a little bit more tighter or snug around your arms. You're putting on some muscle in your biceps, right? A little bit more loose in the legs. Maybe you've lost some weight in your butt. So body composition has changed. All right. So you've exchanged fat for muscle. The weight on the scale, exact same. Okay. This is very common. This is why I tell people when you are gauging your progress, when you're using metrics, whether it's strength in the gym, whether it's actually measurements, or whether it's the scale, it's very important to take progress photos. Okay. And I talked about this last week, how, in my opinion, progress photos are the most important metric that you can use to gauge success. All right. And you don't need to compare your photos on a weekly basis. Take your photos on a weekly basis, but compare them every 2 or 3 weeks apart. So, for example, if you take your photos on, let's say, February 1st, I still want you to take your photos on February 7th, but don't compare your photos of February 7th to February 1st. Take more photos on February 14th. Now you're comparing your photos 2 weeks apart, February 1st with February 14th. Okay. So you can start to see those changes. This will really help, especially when progress stalls on the scale. Okay. Because your progress might not be stalling at all. All right. You could actually be doing what I believe everyone should be trying to do when they're trying to do a physique transformation and improve their overall health and well-being, which is exchange fat for muscle, not necessarily just drop weight on the scale. All right. You have to remember muscle weighs more than fat. All right. So muscle is very dense. All right. So don't get caught up on the number and don't just think, oh, my weight's not going down, so I have to keep cutting calories. I have to add in more cardio. Yes, you might have to do that if you're not leaning out. But if you are leaning out and you're doing everything consistent, your strength is going up in the gym, your clothes are starting to fit you better, your progress photos are on point, don't worry about what the number on the scale says. Okay. I know it's a bit of a mind fuck for a lot of people because they get so focused on that number, but I promise you, I've seen people, and I include myself in this, that look better at a heavier weight than a lighter weight. All right. And what I usually do is I go back to my competition days when I would look at my photos. I'm like, I look leaner at 198 pounds than I did at 178 pounds, even though I weighed 20 pounds more. But I added on more muscle and my body fat was lower. So I always keep that in mind when I'm using the scale for my own metric, right? Because I still look at the scale, but I don't use it as the be all end all. I say, okay, my weight is up by, 2, 3 pounds this week. Why is that? Maybe it's because I'm retaining water. Maybe I had a cheat meal, so my body's retaining some additional sodium, right? That's very common. I like to just have an idea, I should say, as to how the weight fluctuates for both myself and my clients, so I understand how their bodies work, especially for my clients who are getting ready for competitions, because I can understand how sensitive they are to sodium or carbohydrates, menstrual cycle, etc. Right? So I use the scale as just a gauge, but it's not my be all end all when I'm trying to compare if someone is doing, progressing with their plan versus if they're actually regressing and they're not performing what I want them to perform. They're not performing how I want them to perform in the gym. They're not looking how I want them to look. And in this situation, then I will make changes. But I don't make changes just based on the number on the scale. All right. And you shouldn't either. All right. Nick, how do I know if I'm building muscle or just maintaining it? Yeah, that's a good question, especially if you are someone who trains a lot, right? You're in the gym 5, 6 days a week, and it's really hard because you see yourself every day. So again, this is where the progress photos really help because you could compare even from month to month. You take your photos the first week of the month and take your photos in the next beginning of the month, and you can start to see those changes. So that's what I used to do when I would compete. I would take my photos and I would compare them. For me, I usually compared my photos every 2 or 3 weeks apart. But as I got leaner and leaner, I was starting to compare them on a weekly basis because then I could really start to notice those changes the leaner I got. But if you're someone who is, let's say you're a guy and you're walking around at 20, 25% body fat, my recommendation to you is to take those photos on a weekly basis, just like I said in the first question, and compare them every 2, possibly 3 weeks apart from one another. Okay. Same thing for women though, too. Like if your body fat's around 35, 40%, and you're really trying to gauge like, okay, am I progressing here? Well, really focus on A, how you're looking, B, how you're feeling, C, how you're performing in the gym. Is your strength going up? Are you getting, is your resting heart rate going down? Are you improving on your cardiovascular endurance? Right. So these are all important metrics to pay attention to as well. All right. So for most people, in my opinion, if you're new to the gym, you're not going to maintain muscle mass. You're going to continuously build muscle, right? The problem is, as you get more advanced if you're training, it becomes more challenging to put on more and more muscle with each passing year. All right. It's not because of the age, it's just because it's difficult to keep putting on more and more muscle unless you're using PEDs, performance enhancement drugs. All right. So bear that in mind. And, even for myself now, like I said last week, I'm not trying to build more muscle. I'm trying to maintain what I have. In fact, I'm trying to get a little bit smaller now, maybe lose some muscle, just for overall health and well-being. But what I really try to pay attention to doing is if I am going to try to preserve as much muscle mass as I currently have, lean muscle tissue, I'm going to make sure that my protein is in check, my complex carbohydrates are in check, and my healthy fats are in check. Okay, so all three macronutrients are in check, and more importantly, I'm really paying attention to my micronutrients, the quality of the foods that I'm consuming. Okay, Nick, what's the minimum effective training needed to change my physique? So, in my experience, beginners can make fairly drastic changes with just training the gym twice a week. All right. But you have to remember that is for someone who is completely new to the gym, fairly sedentary their entire life. Probably if you're a guy walking around at 35, 40% body fat, if you're a woman walking around about 40, 45% body fat. So, you going to the gym twice a week is going to make a significant change in your physique. With that being said, the longer you train, the more fit you become, you're going to want to add more volume to your workouts if you want to continuously see more changes with your physique. All right. So let's say you're that guy who's at 35% body fat, and after training twice a week for 6 months, you brought your body fat levels down to 28%. Well, you're going to have a really hard time bringing them down to 25% if you stay at twice a week. So you're going to have to add something in or take something out. Okay. I prefer to add something in, which is another workout, okay, as opposed to taking out more food. All right, so we add in another workout. Oh wow, now I'm adding more muscle, right? I have my own day for legs, for example. I have my own day for upper body. I have my own day for chest, back, shoulders, arms, whatever it may be. Now you're giving more priority. You're going to build more muscle. It's like anything in life. The more that you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, right? The analogy I've always used is if you're building a business, you can't build a business working once or twice a week on it, right? So same thing with your physique. If you want to build a physique that you're really proud of, and a physique that if you're a guy, you can take your shirt off at the beach and you're not feeling self-conscious. If you're a woman, you can walk around in a bikini. You have to put in the work, all right? And it goes hand in hand with the diet and the training, right? So you have to make sure that your diet is dialed in, and you have to make sure that you're training on a continuous basis, okay? So, in my opinion, people really see significant changes. Beginners see significant changes in the first 6 months, just training twice a week. And then start adding on more because it's going to become more challenging. The leaner you get, the harder it gets to see those results. So you have to put more work into it. Okay. So you're that guy, now you're at 28% body fat. You want to bring that down to 25% body fat, add another day. Now you're at 25%. Okay. Stay at 3 days a week, but maybe add in some more cardio. Okay. Now you're at 20%. You want to still stay at 3 days a week? No problem. Let's look at your diet now. All right. So you can make tweaks and changes along the way based on how you're progressing. All right. So again, my recommendation, and this goes again with those first two questions, to really gauge progress, I really think it's important to take progress photos. And like I said, you don't have to post them up on Instagram. You can just keep them for yourself, save them in your phone. Only you have access to it. So you can use those comparisons so you know where do I need to make changes. Hey, I'm losing weight in my legs, but I'm not really losing weight in my upper body. Well, that's just your genetics. But maybe you can prioritize your upper body more by giving it more work on more abdominal work, for example. You know, you can't spot reduce, but you can definitely firm that area by working it more, right? Maybe you can give your shoulders more work. You want to get more pop in your deltoids. So those progress photos, in my opinion, are crucial for you to stay not only motivated, but you can actually make those tweaks and revisions based on how you're looking. Okay. Nick, why do my arms, glutes, and abs respond slower than everything else? Genetics. I have some people whose arms, glutes, and abs respond quickly. I have other people who takes months for their glutes to come in, right? For myself personally, whenever I get ready for a competition, I mean, I don't carry any fat at all in my legs. So my glutes were already striated within the first week of dieting, right? For me, it was always harder to lose the fat from my lower back and my midsection, right? And I chalk that up to genetics, where your fat cells are distributed, male versus female, activity level, age. Age can play a role, right? And overall, your just fitness level as well is important because if you are someone who is fairly fit, and you are in the gym 5, 6 days a week and you are watching what you eat, you know that when your body fat's low, to get it even lower, it becomes more challenging. All right. But I can tell you right now from working with the general population that everyone has trouble spots. I notice with women, for example, when I train women for competitions or for a wedding, whatever it may be, the lower body takes a little longer to come in. The upper body is usually there first. Okay. 9 times out of 10. Rarely do I have a woman that gets the lower body there first and the upper body's behind. It's usually the other way around. With guys, it's the opposite. The guys I work with, the lower body, men, we don't really carry much fat in our lower bodies, right? I mean, some men do. And usually with those men, it's because their prolactin levels and estrogen levels are a little bit higher, right? But most men, we tend to carry the bulk of our fat in our waist, our midsection, our intercostals obliques, aka the love handles, and the lower back, right? So that's the area I find for guys is the last to go. All right. And that's just your genetics, right? If you look at a bodybuilding competition, you look at all the guys and they're all like genetic freaks, right? But you'll notice that some guys have better body parts than others. It's not necessarily that those guys with the better body parts train harder than the other guys. They could all train the same. In fact, the guys who have the worst body parts could even train harder, but it's their genetics, right? So that's why with the Mr. Olympia or Mrs. Olympia, the top five are usually the genetic elite, right? The genetic elite of the genetic freaks. All right. So you have to understand your genetics. But I will tell you this, that if you are someone and you are trying to just you're not trying to compete. You're just trying to lose body fat and build muscle. And you might get a little frustrated because you're like, man, no matter what I do, let's say you're a woman, I can't lose the fat off my butt. If you continue to do what you are doing and you're doing your cardio, your diet's dialed in, and you're training consistently with the weights, you will lose that fat from your butt. I promise you. It's not going to come off first, but it's going to come off last. All right. That's just your genetics, right? But you have to stay with it. You can't just get frustrated and think, oh crap, I'm just going to give up. You can't just think, well, I'm just going to start working more glutes every day because that's not going to work either. If you overtrain the muscle, it's not going to respond. Give it more priority. Maybe if you're someone who struggles in the lower half of your body, work legs as your first workout of the week after you take a day or two off from the gym, then you come in fresh. But don't necessarily train it more. Okay. Because when you train something more, it doesn't usually respond the way you think it's going to respond. All right. I talked about in the past how I always had a weaker back. So I gave myself 2 back days, but I was very strategic with how I implemented that. I gave myself 1 row day and 1 pull down day. All right. So I didn't give myself 2 row days or 2 pull down days, or I wasn't doing the same exercise twice a week. No, I was doing different exercises, but different planes and ranges of motion to help bring up the width and the girth of my back. And it worked. All right. So again, that was just my genetics. It's not because I didn't train my back hard, just genetically I had a weaker back. All right. So everyone has their strong points and their weak points, right? And my recommendation is to just stay with what you're doing. Okay. Granted that what you're doing is correct and you are watching your macronutrients, you're calculating your macros, you're making sure you're getting in your cardio, you're training with weights on a consistent basis, you're not skipping workouts, you're not cheating on your diet constantly. It will come off, but you have to be patient. All right. Nick, should my workouts feel harder as I get leaner? Well, here's the thing. When you start to lose body fat, all right, say you're on a diet plan and you are in somewhat of a caloric reduction, right? You're reducing your calories, right? I don't want to say you're in an extreme caloric reduction, but you're also not in a caloric surplus. Because if you're in a caloric surplus, you're going to feel stronger. If you have more carbohydrates in your system, of course you're going to feel stronger. You have more glycogen in your glycogen storages, so you're going to feel stronger in the gym. But if you're cutting down your carbs, let's say you are getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, or you're getting ready for a special event or occasion, and you're dropping your carbs, right? You're someone who maybe consumed 300 grams of carbs a day, and now all of a sudden you're doing 150. You are going to feel somewhat weaker in the gym. But if you're dieting strategically, as in, hey, wait a second, yeah, my carbs are low, but maybe I should increase my fats so I feel fuller for a longer period of time. Maybe I should implement my high carb meals around my workout so I don't feel so weak in the gym. Then you're not going to lose muscle. And even though your workouts might seem somewhat more challenging because you don't have as much overall energy from the excess calories you were consuming before or the excess carbohydrates you were consuming from before, your strength should stay relatively the same. All right. So what I would typically do when someone's trying to lose weight, it's very important for me that my clients don't lose strength in the gym. In fact, that's one of the main metrics I look at. If someone tells me I'm losing strength in the gym, I'm not doing the job as a coach. Now, if they're 1 week out from a bodybuilding show, yes, that's normal. But if there's someone who's just trying to lose weight and they're like, hey, my strength is going down, I'm like, okay, that's not good because we're losing muscle. So I have to strategically put carbohydrates and fats around their workouts to make sure that they have enough energy to get through those workouts. So I might give a high carb meal as their pre-workout meal, and I might give them a high fat meal as their post-workout meal so their blood sugar levels don't crash. Obviously, I keep protein moderate throughout the diet plan. So it's really important to pay attention to your strength. But to answer that question, it's not necessarily that the leaner you get, the weaker you get, because that indicates that you're losing muscle. All right. So that's very important. So remember, if you are trying to lose weight and you start to notice that your strength is decreasing significantly in the gym, I'm not talking like 5 or 6 pounds here. I'm talking significantly. Like, for example, if you're someone who usually does a dumbbell bench press with 50-pound dumbbells, and all of a sudden you're going to the gym and you're struggling with 30s, that's not a good sign. Okay, that's your body telling you, hey, we're losing muscle here. Yeah, we're going down on the scale, but we're losing muscle, fat, and water. In an ideal world, you just want to lose the fat, maybe a little bit of water. Okay. But in my opinion, again, unless you're getting ready for a competition, you don't want to lose water weight. Our body needs water. Muscle's 80% of water. It's good for our joints, ligaments, and tendons. Okay. So we do need water. We don't want to be dehydrated. So ideally, you want to keep strength relatively the same. All right. So to answer that question, no, your strength should not be going down dramatically. If it goes down a little bit every once in a while because you are reducing your calories and you're maybe on a lower carb diet, that's normal. Okay. But again, if it's going down drastically, you're doing something wrong. And in that case, my recommendation to you, work with an experienced coach that can help guide you and put together a structured nutritional plan that's going to help you continuously build muscle and lose body fat. Okay. Nick, how do I keep muscle while focusing on fat loss? Well, that kind of goes with what I just said, right? So when you're trying to lose fat as you're just trying to lose fat and you're trying to maintain muscle mass, okay? It's important to not just count calories. It's important to look at your macronutrients. So you want to structure your diet around your workouts. So for example, if I'm trying to lose, let's say I want to lose 5% body fat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, my workout is going to be at 6 a.m. this morning. So I'm going to give myself a moderately high carb breakfast, okay, just so I have my glycogen storages full. And then my post workout, I'm going to make sure that my carbs for me are a little bit higher, okay? And the reason I do that is because that's what works for my body. So I'm replenishing glycogen storages, and then I'll add in some fats so I'm not feeling super hungry an hour after my workout. Okay, and I've always talked about the benefits of adding fats in post-workout so you don't overeat. And that's really important, especially if you're dieting. Okay. Another thing I'll do is I'll put fats, I'll backload my fats. So I'll put, as the day goes on, as I get closer to the evening, I'll increase my fats. So I'm not hungry throughout the day. So I usually will put my carbs at the beginning of the day and I'll put more fats in towards the end of the day as my carbs go low to none. All right. Has nothing to do with, trying to lose fat or no carbs after 6. It's just I don't need carbs when I'm going to bed. Carbs give you more energy. They replenish glycogen storages. So why would I need a bunch of carbs before I go to sleep, right? I don't need that. But fats are really good because fats allow you to actually sleep better, right? And they allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. They're going to stabilize your blood sugar levels and your insulin levels. I'm talking about healthy fats here, okay? So now I'm not talking about trans fats. I'm not really talking about saturated fats. Yes, the body needs some saturated fats, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the fats you get from omega-3 eggs, avocado, natural peanut butter, almond butter, cashews, almonds, walnuts. So those are the type of fats, olive oil that I'm talking about, okay? So that's what works for me. That might not work for someone else. Someone else, I'm gonna be like, you know what? I have to give them maybe more fats post workout and less carbs. So it really depends on the individual. But if you want to continuously build and preserve muscle while you're in a caloric deficit and you're reducing your calories, you have to be strategic with how you implement your meals throughout the day. Period. Okay. Nick, why do I look leaner some weeks but not others, even with consistent training? Because stress, sodium, and hydration all play huge factors. And if you're a woman, menstrual cycle. All right. So here's the thing. There are times when I'm working with someone who is on a diet plan and I've reduced their carbohydrates drastically, right? If I really need to get them lean, let's say I'm putting them on 50 grams of carbs a day. When they send me their progress photos, they have what we call in bodybuilding a flat appearance. They look flat. There's no pop to their muscles. This is normal. All right. So they look smaller. They look like they've lost their muscle, but they haven't lost their muscle. They've just lost the water weight that was popping out that muscle. Because when you're on low carbs, your body's not really retaining much fluid. That's why a lot of people love ketosis diets. But the problem with ketosis diets is they don't replenish glycogen storages. Another problem too of ketosis diets, you're constantly peeing because carbs are like sponges. They sponge, they hold water. So when your carbs are lower, we don't have carbs in your diet, everything's going through you. So it's very unlikely to hold water weight if you're on a low to no carb diet, right? That's why. So again, a lot of people like ketosis because they feel leaner, they look leaner, but they might notice that there's no pop to their muscles, which of course is essentially formed from the combination of carbohydrates with sodium and water, right? So it gives that illusion of the pump, the pop in the bicep, for example, the pop in the deltoid, and the pump that people get in the gym, which is really just blood going into the muscle from the glycogen storage. But with that being said, though, if you're going to continuously take those progress photos, just keep that in mind that if you are comparing your photos every 2 weeks, and let's say 2 weeks ago you were doing 300 grams of carbs a day, and now you've dropped that down to 100 grams of carbs a day, yeah, you are going to look smaller. You are going to look leaner. And if you are a woman, and let's say it is time of the month, and you take your photos, you are going to look a little bit more bloated. Okay. But it's important to know that so that you do not become frustrated, so that you don't say to yourself, "Oh, I need to cut my calories more," or "I need to do more cardio," or "I need to eat more." Like, no, you have to understand how the human body works. So you don't hit the panic button. You just say, "Oh, okay, yeah, my weight is up this week because I'm on my period, or my weight is up because I had a cheat meal last night and I'm holding some water, or I'm looking a little bit more flat, a little bit more stringy, not so much pop to my muscle because my carbs are really low." All right. So as long as you understand that, you're not going to get frustrated when you look at those photos. Okay. But if you don't understand that and you're not paying attention to what you're doing, it can become very frustrating. And that's when people start to troubleshoot, and they usually troubleshoot incorrectly, and they usually do more harm than good. Either they add on more cardio, they start reducing their calories too much, they're constantly overtraining in the gym, whatever it may be. They're trying to do more when really it's just your body is like, nope, I just need a few days. Had a cheat meal or time of the month, or you haven't given me as much carbs in the last week. It will respond. Okay, just keep doing what you're doing and pay close attention to what you are doing, so you understand why your physique is looking and feeling a certain way. Okay. What changes first when a physique transformation starts working? Usually performance and body composition are going to change before you see the changes yourself in the mirror. So if I'm working with someone who is a beginner, they're going to first notice that their strength starts to increase within the first 3 to 4 weeks. That's pretty common, right? They're going to notice that, hey, all of a sudden, if they're wearing, I don't know, a suit, for example, if it's a guy, they're going to notice all of a sudden that maybe they have an extra notch on their belt. Okay. But they might not see those changes yet, especially if it is someone who is fairly overweight. It's a little bit more challenging when you've got a 40-inch waist to see significant change when now you're a 38-inch waist. But you're going to feel it on obviously your pants. Your belt's going to be a little bit tighter. You're going to have to tighten your belt up, right? So those are the changes you're going to notice first from, I guess, from an aesthetic point of view. But number one, it's going to be your performance. Your mobility is going to increase, your flexibility is going to increase, your resting heart rate will probably decrease, your blood pressure will probably decrease. So these are all things that you're going to notice first. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, those are not things that are motivating factors. People want to see results, right? They want to see it, especially today's generation. We're in that instant gratification. If they're not seeing results within the first week, people are gone, right? So I always tell people to manage your expectations and say, okay, well, rather than let's just chase that six pack right now, let's just chase you getting into the gym 3 times a week. Let's just chase you getting your squats up to 45-pound plate per side. Let's just try to get your squats go using full range of motion. All right. So we make those small goals and then we can manage our expectations. And then again, I've talked about this before, small changes turn into big changes, okay, with your physique and your performance. So remember that. So as long as you stay motivated in the gym and you're continuously getting in your workouts, you're dialing in your diet, and you're doing everything on a consistent basis, because really consistency is key. That's the number one thing I see where people fall off is they're not consistent. They train for 1 week, then you don't see them for 2 weeks. They train for a month, then you don't see them for 3 months. That won't work. Okay. You have to stay consistent. And that's why I go back to that analogy of building a business or building your career. You didn't do it working 1 day a week. Okay. You didn't do it working 1 month and then taking 3 months off. So the same thing has to be applied when it comes to building your physique, transforming your physique. You have to be in there day in, day out. No, you don't have to be in the gym 7 days a week, but you have to be dialing your diet 7 days a week. Okay. And then maybe have 1 or 2 cheat meals max a week, depending on how far you are out from what you want to achieve with your physique. If you're someone like me, I don't even do cheat meals, right? I don't like cheat meals. So some people like them, some people don't. So you have to understand, your lifestyle. You have to understand what you're willing to put in. And the more you put in, like I said earlier, the more you put into this, the more you're going to get out of this. All right. So manage your expectations. All right. Don't set unrealistic goals. Set SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals. Because if you're setting unrealistic goals, if your goal is to get a six pack in 3 months and you've got a 40-inch waist and you're only training twice a week, I can guarantee it's not going to happen. All right. It will not happen. But if you're someone with that 40-inch waist and you're like, you know what, I want to get a six pack within a year and I'm going to work out 3 to 5 days a week with weights and cardio, you have a really good chance of making that happening, bearing in mind that your diet's also dialed in. All right. Okay, last question. Nick, what habits matter most for long-term physique results, not just quick fixes? Well, the consistency in the training, the nutrition, and the sleep always take precedence over everything else. If you can't be consistent with just even one of those things, you're not going to last. All right. And that is so important because I struggled with this over the years was when I first started training, I had my training down in the gym. I had my cardio down. I was lifting the weights in the gym. I was sleeping 7, 8 hours a night, but my diet was shit. So what I noticed was that, yeah, I had built up some muscle. And because I was a teenager, I was fairly lean, but I still had a little bit of a belly because my diet wasn't dialed in. So once I started to learn about dietary nutrition, that's when I saw changes in my physique. I'm like, oh, wow. So if I'm consistent and I don't eat freaking cereal and I don't have bread and I start having oatmeal and I start having cream of rice and I start having chicken breast, turkey breast, salmon, wow, my physique can change. But if I eat all that other shit, it's not going to change. So I learned that dietary nutrition was crucial. Okay. So that was my Achilles heel when I was younger. And then as I got older, it was my sleep because I'm like, well, I wanted to build my business. So instead of sleeping for 8 hours, I brought my sleep down to 4 hours so I can get more done in a day. Well, that was detrimental to my health. I mean, I got a seizure from that. And my physique honestly stopped responding. I remember doing my last bodybuilding show and I just didn't look as good. And it wasn't because I wasn't training hard enough. I wasn't dieting hard enough because I was. I was doing everything I always did. I trained hard, I dieted hard, but I wasn't sleeping enough. So my body wasn't recovering properly. So it took time to learn that the body, for me anyway, it took me time to learn that it's only going to progress if all three of those components are aligned. So your resistance training and your cardiovascular training, in addition to your dietary nutrition and your sleep and your recovery. All right. And if just one of those three things are missing, you're going to falter. All right. So it's really important to keep all three aligned at all times. The more consistent you are with all three, as in you're going to bed at a regular time, you're getting up at a regular time, the body loves to be regular with everything, right? We're creatures of habits. Human beings are creatures of habits. We respond really well to schedules. Okay, we do. I don't even care if you're a type B personality. Your body responds to a type A format. Okay. So that means it likes to know when it's being fed. It likes to know when it's going to bed. It likes to know when it's going to the gym. All right. So if you can stay consistent with all three of those components, you're going to progress dramatically with your physique and your health and your performance. All right. And that's easier said than done because there's a lot of times you're like, no, I want to stay up a few hours and watching this Netflix movie, or no, I feel like ordering that pizza instead of having my chicken and rice that's pre-made in the fridge. Or you know what, I'm gonna skip this workout today because I'm just tired. I got a lot of work to do. So I understand. Okay, there's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be plateaus that you're going to hit. But it's up to you to be strategic with how you're going to surpass those plateaus. Okay, how you're going to move around those obstacles. All right. So someone who is prepared and who plans ahead can go so far when it comes to physique transformation and improving your overall health and fitness and well-being. All right. But you have to be prepared. So to answer that question, the most important habit would be to be prepared and to make sure that your resistance training, cardiovascular training is in line with your dietary nutrition and your rest and recovery. And I'll throw hydration into that because hydration is crucial. It kind of goes into dietary nutrition, but I can't stress this enough for those people who don't drink enough water. You will feel so much better if you are getting in regular amounts of water on a daily basis. And I know that might seem obvious, but there are so many people who don't drink enough water. And it's actually one of the biggest red flags I see with my own clients is they don't drink enough water. They drink coffee. I'm like, well, no, coffee is a diuretic. So for every cup of coffee you have, you should be having at least 2 cups of water. All right. So again, muscle is 80% water. So if you're dehydrated, it's going to be very hard to train the gym because your muscles aren't going to have the water, the hydration that they need. Okay. And also that's very hard on your joints, ligaments, and tendons. All right. So you want to make sure that you're consuming enough water as well. All right. But the best habit, stay consistent with your training, stay consistent with your diet, stay consistent with your rest and recovery, and you're going to reap the benefits from that. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, February the 23rd. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching my YouTube channel, for supporting my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all once again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.